I have 10:01. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. I think we have a quorum, don't we, Mark? If everybody had a chance to review the agenda, so I'll entertain a motion at this time to approve the agenda. Second. Properly moved and second. A discussion. And readiness hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, no. Agenda is approved. Committee reports versus ACAT, James Apperson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our committee met Monday. It's going to forego the microphone. We met Monday and voted to endorse the staff reports on the 2045 mobility project and the 2018-2021 TIP. So we did vote to endorse those. I'd like to thank the committee for voting last meeting. I'm sorry I wasn't here. I had a job commitment I had to be at, but I wanted to thank you for voting to add Dr. Frank Lala as a member of the ACAT. He represents the deaf community. I think that's a representation that we need. And to that end, Dr. Lala was not able to attend our meeting Monday because we were unable to find a sign language interpreter to attend the meeting to interpret for him. And I wanted to mention that because each and every one of us work for government entities of one form or another, which means we fall under Title II of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which requires us to provide effective communication to any citizen that wants to attend any of our meetings or participate in any projects or programs that we have. And there is a dearth of sign language interpreters in this area, probably in the whole state. There are probably a dozen sign language interpreters in the area. The majority of those work for the school systems, so they're not available between 8 and 5 on a workday. And that really exposes us to liabilities. I think the only solution to this is to try to get some sign language programs in our local universities, either the Georgia Southern Armstrong campus or Savannah State. So I would strongly request that any opportunity you have to communicate with those entities, if there's some way we can get sign language programs involved in those, I think it would be of benefit to all of us. The other thing I think we may want to look into is cooperating among entities, cities, and county governments to try to develop a pool of sign language interpreters that are available. Thanks for indulging me, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, may I comment on this?
Yes.
I was teaching a number of programs traveling around the country for a while, and we had to satisfy that requirement. And one of the things we ran into was a signer can only work for 2 hours at a time. Right. So if you had a long meeting, you'd have to have two.
We have to have two.
Just to complicate things even more. What we wound up doing was using court stenographers who actually fed into a monitor. And they could work.
CART. It's real-time transcription.
Right. And it goes into a monitor. So if you had a group of people, everybody would be able to see it. It's probably more expensive, but it is possibly an alternative too.
We looked into that and also into what's called video relay interpreting. Video relay interpreting is $3 a minute, so it becomes prohibitively expensive for a meeting that's an hour long. The problem with CART is that if a deaf person is deaf from birth or early on in their development, they learn American Sign Language. And American Sign Language is as different from English as Spanish is. So CART is a solution, especially for people who acquire deafness older in life, later in life because they have the English capability, but for a lot of sign language users, it's not really.
I think what you're going to wind up having to come up with is a mix of solutions.
Yeah, I agree, 100%. Thank you.
Next, CAC, Chris Middleton. It's not.
Chris is not here, but the CEC did endorse the draft financially constrained for 2025 project list and amendments to the fiscal year 2018 budget. And CEC had a very, very long discussion about I-16 widening project and I-16 X307. We did receive the written comments this morning, so we will forward that to GDOT and then Chatham County for project management.
Okay. Pam?
The technical coordinating committee met on Thursday, June 20th, and we did have a quorum. We went through an agenda very similar to today's. All the action items, including endorsement of the draft financially constrained MTP project list and the TIP amendments were approved. The Economic Development and Freight Advisory Committee also met the same day and had a quorum. The approved action items for that committee also included the draft financially constrained MPP project list.
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Mark, the director's report.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I just wanted to tag on to Pamela's remarks about the EdFAC committee. That was the last scheduled meeting of the EdFAC committee for this year. We're currently engaging in a dialogue amongst ourselves and will be probably for the next few months between our staff and the chairman about what the schedule looks like next year. They don't have the same prescribed schedule that the other advisory committees have, but we'd like to see them meet 2 or 3 times a year. We think the times when we're developing the TIP makes a lot of sense, and we'll also look for possibly others when we may have special studies going on or a congestion management process update, something like that. This is a meeting where we're starting to see the several efforts come to fruition. Our Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. We're going to ask you to approve the draft project list. Later on, we also have progress reports on our 2 interchange studies that we began last year, the I-95 Aries Avenue and the I-16 Little Neck Road. We have TIP amendments for end-of-year adjustments for some transit funds for CAT and some admin mods that we'll just make you aware of to our UPWP for 2019 and 2020. And that's about it. I'll let the presenters begin.
Anybody have any questions of Mark? Next is an action item. Have everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? And if there are no additions and no corrections, I would entertain a motion this time to approve the minutes.
So moved. Second.
Properly moved and second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, any readiness? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. The minutes are approved. Next we have is approval of the draft financial constraint mobility 2045 project list, and Stephanie
Thank you,
is going to talk about this.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This might be starting to get a little bit redundant, but we want to make sure that you're all very comfortable with this before we go for final adoption in August. So our action item today is regarding the focusing on the financially constrained list. We introduced this to you at the last meeting in April. Just a real quick refresher. You have a map and a spreadsheet in your packet, and you were also sent out a more detailed packet with all the projects itemized on each page with your agenda packet. Just a reminder, the project selection process has been going on for several months. Just the assumptions that we made going into this, all projects that are currently under development were moved forward from the 2040 plan into the 2045 plan. And you'll see that on the spreadsheet that those projects primarily dominate the cost band 1 or the orange projects, or on the spreadsheet, they're at the top of the list, most of the ones that are at the top. Then we also took a look at projects that were already prioritized in the adopted 2040 plan, and some of those that had not gone under development yet, but were still identified as a priority, can also move forward into the 2045 plan. And then there was a little bit of room left for some new projects. And those new projects came out of technical analysis from the travel demand model, from committee input and subject matter experts from our technical coordinating committee and IDPAC. So you have the map in front of you. Itemizing, there's been no changes since April on this, just also wanted to mention that as well, regarding all the projects. And the projects that are mapped, of course, does not include everything. The other elements in the financial constraint plan that are not mapped include some policy statements for some set-asides of the federal highway dollars. So we have several set-asides regarding maintenance. The total life of the plan, there's $232+ million for the life of the plan for maintenance. Non-motorized projects, there's a set aside for $12 million for the life of the plan, and that includes projects that are in the adopted non-motorized plan would be eligible for this funding source. Operations projects, there's about $140 million, and then transit improvements and bus replacement. So the transit has kind of two sources of funds they can dip into. There is a set aside of the federal highway dollars that includes about $18 million. We base this on the estimate of buses being about $700,000 to replace. So depending. So it is kind of an estimate of saying there might be some improvement or need or a bus replacement, an annual $700,000 installment. So that over the life of the plan, it comes to about $18 million. The other transit dollars that are available come out of the transit revenue that's out of the FTA funds. And that's specific to transit only. We had estimated that the revenue would be about $221 million plus. And we took the list that CAT had compiled for the SPLOS that's coming up, and these are their priorities that they identified. We do not have specific projects identified because CAT's not planning on a 20-year time frame like we are. They're planning more within like a shorter time frame. So these are the priorities that those funding dollars would be applied to. So we're looking today for your approval on the draft list. This is a draft list that's been out for public comment, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, Stephanie, before we push for the motion?
Move to approve. Second.
Properly moved and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Any unreadiness? Hearing none. All in favor, and said aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. You convinced everybody, Stephanie. Next, we have amendments to fiscal year 2018 through 21 TIP. And Ms. Markota Lang was talking about this.
Good morning. We advertised for a public hearing for the TIP amendments, so I will follow procedure by reading the opening statements first and then give the presentation before the chairman opens the public hearing. And also we have some new members, seems like from the public, and then 2 new board voting members. So just make sure that you give you a little bit understanding of this MPO process. And the Coastal Region Metropolitan Planning Organization is responsible for transportation planning in the Savannah region. The purpose of an MPO is to ensure federal spending on transportation for urbanized areas of over 50,000 people occurs through a comprehensive, cooperative, and continuing process involving the public, a wide range of agencies and policymakers. And what is the Transportation Improvement Program, TIP? The Transportation Improvement Program is the Metropolitan Planning Organization's short-range programming document, and is a staged multi-year listing of surface transportation projects proposed for federal, state, and local funding within the metropolitan area. All transportation projects must appear in approved long-range transportation plan and TIP before they may receive federal funding for implementation. Like Stephanie mentioned, the long-range transportation plan covers 25 years, and the TIP covers 4 years. So our current TIP is fiscal year 2018 to 2021. So this is the end of the fiscal year. June 30th would be the end of the fiscal year 2019. So by the end of the fiscal year, we normally check the TIP project development status, and if they're on schedule, development on schedule, that means the funding will be authorized in the designated year or programmed year. We're okay with them. For the highway projects, we actually only have 2 projects that we need to move to fiscal 2020. So all of the highway projects programmed in fiscal 2019 on schedule. So that is good. There are only 2 projects. One is the US 80 bridges replacement, the right-of-way phase. We are moving that to fiscal year 2020, and another one is I-16 widening. We're moving the right-of-way to fiscal year 2020 from 2019. So for those administrative modifications, they are not part of this TIP amendments. What we're talking about today, the TIP amendments are all involving transit programs. So we actually have 8 transit programs that need TIP amendments. Section 5307H, Section 5337, Section 5339, Section 5339C, and FHWA ferry boat program formula funds, and then some flexed funds from the Federal Highway Administration to FTA. That includes M00 funds, M230 funds, and Z230 funds. So I'll just go into those into details. So basically what happens is we programmed all these funds into fiscal year 2019 and fiscal 2018. And then if CAT haven't applied for these funds, or if they are in the middle of the application process and the FTA haven't obligated the funds yet by the end of fiscal 2019, that's by June 30th, we need to move them to 2020. So CAT from July 1st, and CAT can apply for those funds and get those funds in 2020, because this is a check for FTA. So you have to make sure your program funds are in the correct year. So this is what happens. For the 5307, basically the fiscal 2018 funds have been obligated, fiscal 2019 funds haven't. So that's about $3.2 million. So we're moving that funds to 2020, fiscal 2020. And then for 5337 program, actually 2018 and the 2019 funds, because FTA's fiscal year is a little bit different from the FHWA. So they haven't awarded the funds to CAT. So we're moving all of those funds into fiscal 2020. And this is for water ferry services. And then for 5339, some of the funds in fiscal 2018 have been obligated, but majority haven't. And none of the funds in fiscal 2019 have been obligated. So we are reallocating the unobligated funds from fiscal year 2018 and 2019 to fiscal year 2020. And all of the funds will be used for ITS implementation. And after 2020, in 2021, and all of the funds will be used for facility enhancements and vehicle purchase. Uh, 53397 program, we have about $4 million program in fiscal year 2019, and CAT haven't got the funds yet. So they haven't got funds obligated yet. So we're moving that to fiscal year 2020. Another one is the federal highway portion of the ferry boat program, the formula funds. None of the funds in fiscal 2018 and 2019 have been obligated, so we're moving all that funds to 2020 as well. And then we also have like I did mention the 3 additional funding programs. We did allocate some highway portion of the funds to CAT for ITS development. They haven't got that funds yet. That funds need to be moved to 2020. And then the M230 funds, we allocated the previous year's allocation from fiscal 2015, 16, 17, 19, and 18 and 19. So CAT want to like apply for those funds all together because they will all be used for vehicle purchase. So they will start the application process soon. So we're going to move all those funds to 2020 so they can apply them all at once. And the last part of money is allocated the Z230 funds. These funds have been authorized by Federal Highway Administration and transferred to CAT. So CAT can start to apply for them. These funds will be used for vehicle purchase and infrastructure like equipment, electric charger, electric buses, and then part of that money will be used for the ITS development. So this would be all of the transit funding program that we just need to just move them into the right year. So CAT can either start the application process or continue their already process in the tram system. So we will work with the CAT, Aiden over here, or Terry Harrison, the financial directors, to make sure that they do get these funds because we do need you to apply for these funds. All the federal dollars have 3 year because you don't want to have these funds lapse, right? So you want to apply for these funds as soon as possible so you can start to use them. So basically, what we're doing right now is just to program the transit project into the correct fiscal year so that they can we will just facilitate their funding application. And that's the presentation. We can open the public hearing.
At this time, we'll open the public hearing to see if there are any comments from anyone in the audience. So anyone in the audience who wish to provide any feedback or comments? Hearing none, I'll declare the public hearing closed. Any members have any questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, just real briefly on the Lazaretto Creek and Bull River bridges, it says administrative modification. Can you give me a quick, brief explanation so I can report it back? Well?
Yeah, I was told the right-of-way authorization, you have the local funds, and that won't happen in fiscal 2019. Well, that won't happen before June 30th, but it can start to happen on July 1st. So it's just like 1 day difference. But it just there's no way that they can get the funding authorized, by June 30th.
Right, but it's a slight increase.
Yeah, 280. I think previously it was like 275. I think now it's like 282,000.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the only difference.
Okay, I just want to make sure I understood. Thank you.
That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further questions? If not, I don't have any other businesses. Mark, do you have anything else before we move to status reports?
Do you want to make motion for this one?
We got to approve.
Yeah, we got to approve it. This is an action item. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second? Properly moved and second. All in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. There's no other business. We'll now move to status report. We'll have the 2045 Metropolitan Transportation Plan update. Stephanie Rossi will be talking about this.
All right, thank you. Me again. So I just want to give a really quick update on the project where we've been since April, and we last showed you the project list. So we are now in the home stretch. We're in our public comment period here through July, and then in August we'll be back for adoption. Just a quick recap of the last couple months. Part of the public comment period, the first step is to submit the draft to FHWA, GDOT, and FTA for their. They have 30 days to supply any comments that they have. On May 30th, they presented their comments to me, and I had a brief conference call. Primarily, the comments revolved around flow of the document itself, and some clarifications, but no changes to content, no changes to the project list, and we hit all the required elements that the FHWA looks for in their plan updates. So, good news on that front. We have 3 open houses that we've scheduled through the public comment period. We had one June 13th, we had one last night, and our last one is tomorrow. And then we've also been doing some presentations and taking advantage of other meetings that are already going on throughout the region and getting on their agendas. And so we've gone down to Richmond Hill, we've spoken with Gulfstream staff, Coastal Georgia Indicators, West Side Neighborhood Association, Pooler, and Effingham. So we've tried to reach out to some of the groups that are a little further out, and as well as those who have invited us to come to their meetings. So the official public comment period opened on June 17th, and it goes through July 16th. And this is I'm going to jump out of this real quick and just show you the website real quick. So all the documents are loaded on our website and are available for download. And there's also access to the public comment survey form that you can get to. You can get to it a few different ways, but you can submit comments through clicking on this. It'll take you to a survey. And then the flyers we've been passing out also have a QR code on them, and people can scan the code. And we've been getting comments, so those have already been coming in through the form. All the documents are here for download. And then we also have a map that's interactive if you prefer, instead of downloading 100 pages, you can click around on the map and get more information that way. You can bring up some project information, and then project pages will also come up. And then if there is a GDOT PI code or project code already in motion, that'll be active too, and then it'll take you to the GDOT page. So there's a few different ways to get information about the projects and the plan. Okay. Still haven't worked out that smooth transition going back and forth. So our upcoming milestones, we first presented you the project list back in April. Today we had the action item on that to approve that, and then we'll be back in August. August 1st, we'll be going to TCC and to all the other committees to ask for an endorsement to the board for final adoption on August 7th for the plan. And I'll give you a little bit more information about what's actually in the plan in terms of content. So that is the brief update. If anyone has any questions.
Any questions? Stephanie?
Thank you.
Next, we have the I-95 Airways Avenue interchange study. Mark, you said you had some guests here. Who's going to talk about this?
Yes, I just want to take a moment to introduce our consultant project managers. These are the studies that we received a competitive planning funding award for in the fall of 2017. Both studies are high-grade interchange studies that are being conducted and carried out in order to meet the basic requirements of an interchange modification report. That is because they both involve interstate interchanges, and the IMR, or interchange modification report, is a required process with Federal Highway Administration. But procedurally, we're not calling them an IMR. We're just planning to try to rebrand them as such, presuming they're successful, pending their successful completion at the end of the year. Both studies will be presenting the shortlisted alternatives that are being studied in detail. The I-16 Little Neck study is a little further along. They also have their traffic forecast, but the I-95 Airways Avenue study, we had a couple of setbacks. Our data collection week, as first planned, coincided with the plane crash on 21 that you may recall from last year. So there were major traffic diversions, and we had to reschedule that. So we rescheduled them to the fall. That happened to also be a week when South Carolina had called a hurricane evacuation about 10 miles up the road. We didn't think that was a good time. So we will be completing the forecast for I-95 Airways during the summer and working with the steering committees on both studies to develop the recommended preferred alternative. Those will come back to this board in October. So that's a thumbnail sketch of where we are. And I'm going to introduce Richard Fangman with Pond. He's going to present the I-95 Airways study. And David Pickworth then will present the I-16 Little Neck Road study. Great, thanks, Mark. Thank you all. Let me get this pulled up here real quick. Great. Well, yeah, it was exciting to be here to talk about this great interchange. It's definitely a place that's where a lot of folks are experiencing traffic congestion today. We also know that it's a really important regional interchange, and so we're meeting with you. As you see, we'll go through this presentation. We're meeting with a lot of people in the community, a lot of stakeholders. We're doing some technical analysis and looking at a lot of different alternatives to make sure that we get it right with this interchange. So first, the project needs and purpose. Trying to improve that access to support tourism and economic growth in the area is really important. This is the gateway to the Savannah International Airport, and as the employments are continuing to grow there, this will be even more critical into the future with that strong growth. Also, it's the front door to Gulfstream Aerospace and its 13,000 plus employees that are using this interchange. So that's sort of the east side of the interchange. Then on the west side of the interchange, there's a major commercial retail center and community over there with the city pooler, with more and more residential growth there occurring as well. But one of the things that impacts interchange quite a bit, I know, is that there is a lot of retail that's in that area that causes some congestion at the interchange now. So the Tangier Outlet Center, the Sam's, the Home Depot, and then the Pooler's population growth that's happening has resulted in a good bit of traffic volume that's on that side too, and making sure that we provide good access to them is really key. One of the main things, though, one of the main reasons to do an interchange improvement is for safety. We want to improve the operations, but really critically is the safety of the interchange. There's high crash rates on Pooler Parkway and Arrowways Avenue. But the other thing that we want to be really aware of and cognizant of through this process is the potential for queuing back onto I-95. There's queuing occurring now, particularly on Saturdays and some other peak times, going back to I-95 sometimes. But we don't want that to become even more critical into the future. And that's one of those key things that the Federal Highway Administration will be looking at when they look towards approval of this. It's what are we doing to really improve that potential for queuing. Along those lines, I know the airports, we've been doing our traffic analysis and looking at queuing from the volumes, and the airport's going to be also looking at doing some aerial, doing some drone surveys of there, so we can actually get some video and photographic confirmation of the queue. So the study area is going to include about a mile either side of the interchange, shown as that middle dot there on the graphic, and we're also looking one interchange north and south. For purposes of the federal highway documentation, you have to show that you can't make improvements at adjacent interchanges that would preclude what we need here. I don't think that's likely here because it's such a destination-oriented traffic, but that's something that we are looking at as well. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's okay. Oh, that's okay. Sometimes it just does that. What are we studying? So what are the things that are key to be studying? We want to look at, again, the intersections and the things that are right at the interchange. Also, these ramp junction points and freeway segments are important because making sure those freeway segments flow well and those ramp junctions operate correctly is some of the key things that GDOT and FHWA are looking for. And again, making sure that we don't have that back up onto the freeway is one of the critical elements because of the high risk of injury and fatal crashes with that. Public and stakeholder engagement is something that we've been been working on over the past several months. We've engaged a lot of the different agencies, Chatham County, the city of Pooler. We went to met with them at one of their council meetings, got to present there.
as well as other stakeholders that we've had in official, meetings and interviews that have been held largely at the airport facility. We've also engaged the business community. We've had meetings with Gulfstream, Tanger, several of the homeowners associations in the area, and have also reached out to these other retailers as well. So that's been really some of our stakeholder engagement up to date. What we'll be doing over the next several months, we'll be going out to the public in 3 different engagements to get public input on the study itself, and then the results. And the first of those will be coming up in about a month, in July. And stakeholder interviews with others as needed as we go through the process, and then of course meeting with GDOT and the MPO and airport as we move through the process. So that's sort of a little bit about our process. I wanted to talk a little bit about the data, and then we'll talk about these alternatives. So one of the things we looked at closely along those arterials, as well as looking at some of the stuff on the freeways, but the arterial is really where the story of a lot of the crashes is occurring. And so one of the things you can see by looking at that graphic there, the darker red, the bigger the circles are the number of crashes and intensity of crashes. And you can see just west of the interchange, there are several intersections that are having a lot of volume and a lot of crash experience there, with Benton Boulevard being the highest. So that's an area we really have to watch for and see what we can do to look at mitigating crashes. Along this arterial too, there have been 2 fatalities in the last 5 years. So that also underscores again, what can we do to try to reduce fatal crashes along the corridor. So what I want to do is walk through, I guess, the 4 and give you an overview of the 4 interchange options and alternatives that we've looked at. We looked at several, and we've sort of narrowed down to 4 that we are doing more detailed analysis on. Interchange option 1 is some of your traditional kind of widening of the intersection, widen the interchange and the bridges and the ramps, keeping those same traditional access points. And because of the ability to add another through lane through this area with this option, it really does. First we might think, oh, just widening that same old bridge, is that going to help us? But we can get some capacity out of that. So we're looking closely at that. The other thing is that the bridge is in good condition, so we can widen to the north and south of that bridge fairly readily without having to replace the bridge. Now I'm going to show you some simulations of each of these 2, so you kind of see how they operate. This is some of the preliminary traffic. We're still getting all that approved, and we're in the midst of doing the analysis as we wait those final approvals. But this gives you an overview of how the interchange options look and a little bit about how they're going to operate. So you can see the idea there being having that additional through lane and also blowing those ramps out a bit so that we have more capacity for turning and moving through the interchange. So the cost of that traditional operation, here these again are preliminaries. We're moving through this, about $16.2 million to do that traditional type of widening widening the bridge. And one of the things you'll see on all of these, we don't have right-of-way shown in there. We think that all the options can be done within existing right-of-way, which is a big plus for a project like this as far as trying to control costs. Some advantages and disadvantages. It's a long-term solution to address the traffic demands. It's utilizing an existing bridge, as we said. It's less expensive than some of the other long-term solutions we're going to show you. One of the ones that is a little less expensive is the DDI, so some of the disadvantages not quite as inexpensive as that. Another thing is that the southbound ramps on this one still are very close in proximity to the intersections of Benton Boulevard and Mill Creek. So you've kind of got those 2 that are nearby on the west. And so we'll be looking closely at how those have to operate and changes we have to make to those intersections to make this work well. Another option that we're looking at is the diverging diamond interchange. You've seen this up the road at the State Route 21 interchange. This is one where you could sort of cross over to the other side of the road, to do the operation. One advantage that this has is because we're handling the turning in a different way, we think we could handle this on that existing bridge structure, since we've got those a lot of turning lanes there, right now. So that's going to make this cost, less. So it looks like it's not quite catching up the simulation. There we go. And so similar to the 21, although it would be probably a little more compact in this area because we can't move as far to the west because of those existing intersections. So it'd be a little more compact than the one you see up at 21. And, so that's sort of a crossover operation. But again, it can work very efficiently and and can do that at a lower, a little bit of a lower cost there. But again, because of so looking at some of the advantages and disadvantages, one of the things is it's the least expensive option. But disadvantage is that it's very difficult for this to really affect the long-term traffic. When we look at the outer years, we really start hitting a wall with this option because of the crossing over of the vehicles without having to widen that bridge. So we'll be looking closely at that. If we have to widen that bridge in the future, then that price will, would go up a bit on that option quite a bit. And again, that proximity to the west to those other existing intersections of the channel. Another one is the single point urban interchange, or also known as a SPUI. An example of this one, if you've been in the Atlanta area, is at 400 and right in the heart of Buckhead at Lenox Road. So it's a very high volume intersection there that has this. There's also several of them along, that are on underpasses in northeast of Atlanta along Peachtree Industrial Boulevard. This would be done over the roadway, so it will operate more like a traditional intersection than if you've seen one that's located on an underpass. What this does, before I go to the simulation, is it brings all of the ramps to one point, a single point in the middle where the intersection occurs, and that operates very much like a traditional traffic signal, where your left turns from the side street go at the same time, your throughs go at the same time. So some advantages this has, as you can see, we're separating that distance from the west, from those intersections, by bringing that to the middle. But you can also see the footprint, so it comes at a cost, which is all that extra bridge and structure that's required to get that in there. But it does have the potential for significant improvement to
So those
operate.
middle ramps are elevated?
Yeah, those would be elevated, yes. And we're showing it right over the center of the interchange. It can also shift left or right a bit. If we needed to move further from those existing intersections, we could. But again, those are things that affect costs in the bridge structure, so we'd have to look at that closely. And another challenge there with any of these that have free-flowing ramps are, pedestrians having to cross those free-flowing ramps. This doesn't have there's not a lot of pedestrian activity out there today. And based on the land uses and densities out there, we'll probably, see some in the future, but not as much as you might in other areas of town. So it might not be a bad option to have those free-flowing movements that we're showing on some of these alternatives. We'll also be looking, as we get into the detailing of this, at what if we have to make a stop, a signal to signalize some of those free-flowing movements to make them safer. What does that do for operations? So that's a lot of that what if testing that goes on as we flesh out these alternatives. Cost on this alternative is about $36 million. So it's it's a bit more than the other alternatives. The good thing is, at least what we're looking at now, that's similar to what you've got plugged into your RTP. As far as the magnitude of costs that for that project that you had in there. So we're close with some of these options, like that. Advantage is, again, it handles that long-term traffic really well, but it is a complicated construction with longer traffic delays during construction, and it is a little bit more of an expense to get that bridge in place. Another option is the flyovers from the north and south. Now, this option has an advantage in one regard, in that you're taking all the airport traffic sort of completely out of the picture. Another challenge here, though, is that we have to be very careful on the west interside. We're just having those free-flowing off ramps, and are those going to be able to keep us from backing traffic onto the interstate? So we have to be looking at that closely. We're looking at that now, but we'll be looking at that more with our numbers as we move ahead. But one advantage with this is the ability to separate that intersection. You see, we'll only have the intersection on the eastern side of the road, and not on the western. And as far as it being a full service intersection, we may still need to signalize those right turns to allow them to get through. The other advantage is that we can, and you'll see this reflected a little bit in the cost. Doing a full interchange with ramps like this can be very expensive, but we do think that we can utilize existing bridge to add another through movement, because again, there's so many turn lanes out there now. By taking those some of those turn lanes out with this flyover, it allows us to utilize that space well And so that's reflected a little bit in the cost. You say, well, it's reflecting the cost, but 44 million for something that does that separation is a pretty good cost. But that's because we're able to utilize those lanes on the existing bridge and not have to widen the existing bridge. So there's a lot of different alternatives here that we've talked about. I guess again, advantages of that long-term solution to address the traffic demands. With that little asterisk there that we have to make sure that this option can work well with the freeway for that southbound off-ramp movement. And then removing that east side traffic completely from the equation, though, is really something that works well. It's also a great way to kind of separate the movements of folks who are going to and from the airport are very different trip types and trip purposes than the ones that are going to and from the retail and pooler. And so this sort of separates them into almost two different experiences that they have there at the interchange. And the other thing is that it does not require Pooler Parkway, to necessarily Pooler Parkway improvements, to benefit the travel and to and from the east. So those are kind of the four alternatives. I know that's a lot to kind of get to take in here at one time. Be happy to answer questions either afterwards or immediately afterwards or at the end of the day here. But next steps we have is completing this detailed traffic analysis on the four interchange alternatives, refining the interchange concepts and cost estimates. So we'll be doing that here over the summer. Again, we're doing our analysis as we speak, but still trying to get final approval on some of the numbers. Conducting the public meetings to solicit that input, and then we'll be evaluating the alternatives to select the preferred alternative. And that's where we're going to be wanting to come back and meet with GDOT, meeting with the MPOs, and we'll be presenting what our recommendations are in that regard back to you all when we get to their October timeframe meeting. And then preparing the interchange study report. So again, as I mentioned, Mark mentioned before, we want to, this isn't officially an IMR, but we're going to have this put into documentation so that it's ready to be just turned into an IMR if you and the DOT so choose to do. So.
Any questions?
Yes.
Tom? A couple of quick ones. You probably will, but you didn't show it.
Mm-hmm.
True project cost starts with design, preliminary engineering.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
5 to 10% of construction costs.
Mm-hmm.
That's included as a true.
Okay.
It'll be great cost. And then
we
also,
can do that.
You did a good job at the beginning talking about safety.
Mm-hmm.
I said before, nobody likes congestion,
right?
But a fatality on the main line because traffic's backed up onto it is really not good.
Right.
So you recognize it, but in the pros and cons, I didn't discuss safety.
Okay.
So make sure that at the end we talk about that because ultimately these things are the federal government, and if they see, you want to spend, $30 million to do some improvements at intersections, but you're having fixed spill over on the main line, or there's semis going by at 80 miles an hour, and somebody's car's hanging out on the main line. That's recipe.
Yeah, recipe.
You don't want to.
Okay. That's a good thing. Thank you very much. You're right. We don't have those are the pros and cons the way we should, and we'll make sure that we do that. And again, one of the things we want to do is circle with you and the MPO to make sure we've got a good common set of performance metrics that we're using on this. That's something that we're putting together right now.
We have told us ready to push the button on the forecast. We're just waiting for folks in your shop or
we just got that stuff.
Yeah.
So your shop is still looking at forecasting. So as soon as we get the nod or us continues
Yeah, we have the projected traffic done based on that methodology, so any tweaks we can very quickly adjust. You ready to roll?
Right, that's part of an IMR process.
Yeah.
So it's an interactive process, and we're happy to figure that out. Pretty similar to calling.
Absolutely, and knowing that some of the criteria have been condensed as far as that IMR, there's a little more nuance in there, and that's why we really want to talk with you, Tom, and Mark, and make sure we're all together on the performance metrics that we think are going to make the most sense for comparison on this. So.
All right, Michael, you had a question?
No, I was just pointing to that one.
Anybody else?
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mark, next is that Lower Road and interchange study, I-16.
David Pickworth with VHB. This project is being sponsored by Chatham County. The previous study was being sponsored by the airport. Neglected to mention that. David Pickworth.
Good morning, everyone. Mark mentioned my name is David Pickworth. I'm with VHB, and I'm the project manager for the I-16 Little Neck Road Interchange study. Just want to give a little bit of background on where we've been to date on this project. One of the key things was existing conditions review. So you can see the number of items that we went through. Traffic volumes, we did the data collection. Of note, we actually did the data collection the same week as the plane crash as well. There was a question about whether it would affect the volumes at our interchange. So we did go out in the fall and recollected a handful of counts and just made that comparison to make sure that the diversion was unaffected, and in fact it was not affected. So we were fortunate that we were able to move forward with the counts that we had done in the spring. We also did a crash analysis. We'll go in another slide here and take a look at that a little bit more. Origin destination, we use the core MPO travel demand model to look at travel flows through this interchange, particularly in the future. Because this interchange is located out to the edge of Chatham County, it's maybe not growing as consistently as you would see maybe in town. There's a lot of growth, of course, in the port and the Jimmy Deluxe Parkway extension, which will tie directly to this and really affect the way traffic is delivered to and from the interchange. And we'll look at that as well in a minute. Also did environmental survey as well as pavement conditions and bridge rating of the bridge out there. We took a good look at port growth and expansion, other related development to that in the area, again, to see really how that would affect the project traffic in our development of the future traffic volume. And then finally, we taking all that information into account, we came up with our alternatives, and we'll go through that. Looking at the crash data, our study area here, the Little Neck interchange is in the center. We went one interchange to the west to Old River Road, and one interchange to the east to Fuller Parkway. What you can see here is there really is a relatively high density of crashes at Little Neck Road, as you can see with the intensity of the red interchange. Zooming in there, again, you can see in particular quite a few rear end crashes on the north side of the interchange. So our alternatives are going to look at safety, and of course we'll address safety directly, but problems like this, crashes like this, are usually indicative of operational problems. So just by nature of improving the operations at our interchange, we'll be improving the safety at the same time. This is our existing volume. This interchange is rotated from what we've seen in the previous figures. The north is to the right. Again, nothing real groundbreaking here. This is just the volume that's out here. But let's look at what happens in 2050. And you can see on the north leg, which is labeled as Bloomingdale Road, which of course will be Jimmy Deloach Parkway tying in there in a few years, 380% growth by 2050. And then to and from the west, so the ramps that are facing towards Macon, 470% growth. So that's really showing us how it's growing, particularly due to trucks that are going to use this interchange to access to the port. I think one other thing to point out here is, in addition to that, there is still a heavy movement to and from Savannah. So in the southbound left turn direction, so you can see in the PM, there's 995 vehicles projected to turn left. That reverse movement in the morning, there's 1,125 vehicles turning right. So there is still a heavy movement there, and so in our design considerations, we'll have to take that into account. But just to give you a perspective, this is no build, future no build. This is how the interchange exists today, with the exception of the 4-lane Jimmy Deloach Parkway on the north side of that. So looking at our first alternative, conventional diamond interchange. This is basically just keeping it the way it is operationally, rebuilding the bridge to 4 lanes, having a dual left turn lane on the southbound going into Savannah, again to handle that 995 left turning vehicles. And then you've got a double right turn on the westbound off, again from Savannah, to handle that 1125 AM vehicle. The cost of this is about $24 million. That's construction, utilities, and a 20% contingency. Does not include right-of-way. Right-of-way would be very minimal, but it does not include that. Environmental impacts, there is quite a few wetlands surrounding the interchange, so something important that we do want to look at. It has a little over 4 acres of wetland impact, which has as you can see, a corresponding mitigation cost of about $180,000. We looked at this interchange using the Vixen microsimulation, the traffic tool, to look at the level of service and the delay network-wide. And as you can see, our delay there is about 95 seconds in the AM and 49 seconds in the PM. Let me back up and show you what it was in no build. 984 seconds in the AM and 564. So clearly by 2050, with this much traffic, something would need to be done with the interchange. At the bottom of the table there on the left, you can see the benefit cost ratio is about 8.3. Currently, this benefit cost only includes the benefit of the operational travel time savings. What we are currently working on and will include into this ultimately is the highway safety costs, using a highway safety manual, looking at crash reduction factors as a result of these interchange configurations. So that cost, once that gets included in there, will even drive the BC ratio up a little bit more. Second alternative is the diverging diamond interchange, DDI, that Richard talked about. A little more expensive, about $26.5 million, almost $27 million. Because it's got a slightly larger footprint, it does have a slightly larger environmental impact. It encroaches into the wetland a little bit more. And so a corresponding increase in mitigation cost of about $193,000. You can see in the delay, it performs even better than the diamond, about 69 seconds in the AM and 50 seconds in the PM. However, because it's a little more expensive, the benefit cost ratio is a little bit lower at 7.5. Our final alternative is the partial flow relief. So you can see the southbound to eastbound movement is a flow relief. Again, it's to handle that heavy movement in the PM. Its cost is very similar to the DDI, a little over $25 million. But of course, because that flow relief pushes out the footprint of the interchange, environmental impact goes up to over 6 acres with a corresponding $270,000 mitigation cost. One thing, addition that we are looking at is that's currently a 30-mile-an-hour design loop. And because of the number of trucks that would be anticipated, that may need to be pushed out to a larger radius, which is of course going to push into the wetlands a little bit more. So that's a very limiting factor and may end up being a fatal flaw of this alternative ultimately. Having said that, it does perform well. As you can see, the delay is significantly reduced compared to no build, and the benefit cost ratio is on par with the DDI at 7.5. So just to look at the operational comparison kind of side by side here, the orange bar is the 2050 no build. So this is the 950 seconds that we were looking at in the no build. And so you can see each of the 3 alternatives do have a pretty significant reduction. The gray bar is the diamond, and you can see that is a little bit higher. So what we've started to look at, and we're starting to flesh this out a little bit, is that southbound left turn to go into Savannah. What we're thinking about doing is adding a third lane and developing that north of the interchange for those left turns so that none of that lane changing turbulence is occurring on the bridge. They're able to sort of develop that left turn before the interchange, gives them a little bit more storage length. And some of our preliminary look at that is that drives that gray bar down on par with the other alternatives. Again, just looking at the level of service, here's our no build. I think y'all should understand level of service concept, but basically it's like a letter grade, A through F. F, you never want an F. So as you can see, 2050 level of service in the no build is F and the AM at both intersections. In addition, because of that, it backs up onto the freeway, so you can see the diverge in the eastbound here and the westbound coming from Savannah is an EF. So looking at the conventional diamond, improves the level of service at the intersections. There is still a D at that southern interchange, and again, has a lot to do with that weaving turbulence on the bridge, if you will. So developing that left turn above the interchange, I think would drive that D down to a C. But it does improve the freeway. The traffic is still handled through the interchange. The DDI drops to level service B, so this is very good. No impact on the freeway as well. And then finally, the partial flow relief. Again, the intersections at the interchange operate B in both AM and PM, and the freeway is not affected. So please don't try to read that. But this is an example of what we're going to be doing in our documentation for our alternatives analysis. We have this matrix lining up all of the different performance metrics that we've identified as being pertinent to the study. And so we'll be able to see them side by side, basically assign a 1, 2, 3 score, add that score up, and then, at the end of that, then you'll be able to see what's the best performing alternative, considering all the metrics. So next steps, again, we're going to incorporate any feedback that we hear from stakeholders as well as MPO, county, GDOT, doing a detailed environmental screening and cost estimate of what we think will be the preferred alternative, and then wrapping that all up into the final report. And again, similar to the Airways study, we'll be doing that report in accordance with the FHWA policy, the two policy points that they require for IMR, and then ultimately taking all of that to the public, presenting the alternatives and getting public feedback. That's all I had. Welcome discussion, questions, comments. Thank you.
Any questions? James?
I know one of the recent commission meetings you guys talked about developing a commercial park. Was that on River Road or was that Little Neck?
Yes.
On both?
River Road.
River Road? And it won't impact the Little Neck Road front?
I don't know where it's going to impact. It's
aware of that.
It won't be warehouses.
Right.
It's going to be manufacturing. It's a manufacturing park.
So there'll be a lot of truck traffic?
I don't think it will have the truck traffic. I think you have more automobile traffic than truck traffic because it's prohibited from warehousing and that kind of stuff. So you have limited truck traffic. Nothing like if you have a warehouse.
And there's not a lot of direct connectivity between Old River Road and Little Neck to where there'd be a lot of passing back and forth and that impacting what would be at the respective interchanges.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have the 2019 UPWP administrative modification, and Ms. Wang is going to talk about this.
Yeah, I'll just cover this very shortly. So you know the UPWP Unified Planning Work Program is the staff budget, is actually MPO budget. So we actually adopted the fiscal 2019 UPWP last February. So in the UPWP, we estimate how much money will be allocated to each task. But that was based on the estimate, and this is the end of the year. We want to make sure that budget actually reflects what is actually the spending. So, for example, we allocate a lot of money for tip development. So we think that we might have a new tip by the end of fiscal year, but it ended up that we would just do some tip amendments. So we don't need all that time and the money for the tip development. But in the meantime, we actually have a lot of public information meetings for the 2045 line transportation plan, and we do a lot of presentations at the neighborhood meetings. So actually, we need more funds in the 2045 plan development. So basically, we're just making adjustments within the categories. So we did some budget adjustment with GDOT planning. regarding the planning funds, the PL funds, and we also made some budget adjustment with GDOT intermodal as well. So this is basically just to revise all these numbers and to reflect. Yeah, it's hard to read, but to be reflected all these changes. So the total number of funding contract don't change. So this is just for us to help us to close out the PL contract, and close out the TR transit planning contract with GDOT. So it's just we try to provide this information to you for transparency purposes. That's it. Yeah, GDOT has already approved it. Yes. No action. Yeah, just information.
Yeah. Any questions? Not. Ryan, you're still up to talk about 2020?
Yeah, 2020, we adopted the 2020 UPWP in February of this year, because fiscal year 2020 starts on July the 1st. So we need to develop the planning contract and the transit planning contract with GDOT. When we adopted the UPWP, we actually included this table for the transit planning services. We included $27,000, but we didn't include this in the final calculation. So when we prepared the contract with GDOT GDOT intermodal office, the total number would be about $157,000. But in May, we were notified that we were awarded this $27,000, the discretionary transit planning funds. So we will use these funds for to help CAT to do the remix license and data. But it's just when we adopted the TIP in February, we were still in the application process. So those funds were not awarded yet. But in May, they were awarded. So we want GDOT intermodal to include that $27,000 in the contract. So instead of $157,000 contract, we will have $183,000 contract. So we are just making these administrative changes to add that $27,000 in the fiscal year 2019 UPWP, so the contract can reflect the correct amount.
So we requested an additional $27,000 for use by CAT. And
yes.
Thanks, GDOT. GDOT did approve it, but not in time to include it in the initial UPWP adoption.
Yeah. No action, yeah, just information. Yeah.
Questions, and we have you still up, Ms. Ryan, to talk about the update to the participation plan and Title 6 plan.
Yes, this is also a status report, and it's not going to have action item until August. So basically, we received federal funding. We received federal planning funding and federal transit planning funding as an MPO. So we are subject to the federal rules, and both Federal Highway Administration rules and the Federal Transit Administration rules. So in order to receive all the planning funds, we have to satisfy all those requirements. And one of the requirements is the participation plan and the Title VI plan. So the MPO has to have a Title VI plan and then also a participation plan. We normally update our participation plan every 5 years because that involves, that outline the steps that MPO staff needs to do, how to get the public involved during the long-range plan, TIP development, UPWP development, congestion management process, and so how we address the public involvement. And that's what outlined in the participation plan. The Title VI plan includes several portions, so it's like notice to the public. So basically it deals with non-discrimination. So non-discrimination based on racial, national origin, and color, gender, marital status. So a lot of those. So we need to have a plan dedicated to the Title VI requirements. So GDOT actually this year, they developed the template. We actually adopted our Title VI plan and the participation plan in 2009. We did update. And then the last update happened in 2016. But since GDOT developed this new template, they want us to convert our plan to conform with the template. And they also give us this new guideline that we need to update our Title VI plan every 3 years. we used to update the Title VI plan every 5 years. So now we have to do it every 3 years because the last update was 2016. So we need to update this plan in 2019, so this year. The Title VI plan also involves language assistance. So a lot of people, we actually have more diversified community over here. We have people who speak very limited English. So the language assistance plan address how to satisfy the needs, the transportation needs of the people with limited English proficiency. They call LEP person. And then also environmental justice. So that's the low income, particularly address low income and minority populations. So how the transportation planning process address the needs of the EJ population. So that's outlined in the EJ plan. So all these plans are entwined. So we updated the plan. These plans currently, the draft plans are currently out for the public review and comment. So we normally have a 45-day public comment period. So our comment period started last Monday, and it will end at the end of July. As the Citizens Advisory Committee, they will be in charge of they will be directing us to do the participation plan. So we advertise the public hearing at the next CEC meetings, and by that time we will just outline what exactly has been changed. And then the Advisory Committee on Accessible Transportation, ACAT, they are responsible for directing the staff to update the Title VI plan. So we advertise the public hearing for the next ACAT meeting, and that's August the 5th. So at that time, and we will outline what kind of information has been changed regarding the LEP, regarding the EJ, and regarding the Title VI plan. And then the final public hearing will be at this meeting, and that's August the 7th. So the board will know what the CEC recommended or what the ACAT recommended. So you will be adopting all the Title VI plans and the participation plan at the next meeting. So, and this just for information, just to let you know that we already sent the documents out for public review and comment. So we will just outline the details to you next week, next month. Okay.
Any questions? Councilwoman Shabazz.
Thank you, Chairman. When will, after all the comments and all the processes are completed, is there a timeline or a date set when the conversion that you all line up with the state recommendations on?
After MPO Board adopt the plans, and it will, after we addressed all of the comments, we will finalize the plan and we will send them to the GDOT Intermodal. Actually, GDOT Intermodal wants the Title VI plan updated, and then they send us a concurrence letter. That's when it's final. So probably August. Yeah.
Thank you.
James?
That's okay, Mr. Chairman. I just had a question on some wording. I'll take that off.
Okay. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll have informational reports, and we'll start with GDOT.
Morning. I'll go over some of these projects on the GDOT handout. Project 1's Get You Road Widening, right-of-way acquisitions, final designs ongoing. Effingham Parkway, final design, right-of-way acquisitions ongoing. Project 3's US 80, Johnny Mercer to old US 80. Environmental studies and preliminary design are ongoing. Preliminary bridge plans are under review, and we held a POH back in April. Brampton Road Connector, right-of-way acquisition and final designs ongoing. The 216 projects, POH was held earlier this month, and final designs ongoing. Construction's expected to begin this fall. 25 Savannah River Bridge replacement and Middle River Bridge replacement. Preliminary designs ongoing. Constructability review's been held. On the active side, West Bay Street widening. Working on phase 2 of the curb and gutter, GAB and paving. Traffic was shifted earlier this month for stage 3 construction. The 2 Jimmy Deloach projects. Contractor began work on the railroad bridge and is placing embankment material. Allen's Expressway Bridge. Contractors setting bridge beams and working on MSC walls. Project 7, the resurfacing on Highway 80. The contractor's about 60% complete with paving operations. Hopefully be done with this next month. Project 8, resurfacing on 80 and Pooler. NTP has been issued, pre-con's held. Contractor should begin once they're done down in Bryan County. Project 9, resurfacing on 25 in Garden City. Paving's done. We're preparing for final inspection. The signal upgrade project, Project 11, NTP was issued and they began work earlier this month. And 25 at pipe makers. Utilities are being relocated and we're waiting. I reached out to the area office to get an updated start for the detour. So once I get an answer, I'll shoot it over to you.
Thanks a lot.
Yes, sir. That's all I got.
Questions? John?
Quick one, second page,
Mm-hmm.
number 11. I don't remember, what is that going to involve the intersection? Is that like signal timing?
This, you're talking about the 204, the several locations? Pedestrian improvements pretty much at several intersections. It came out of a road safety audit, so that's how it got programmed. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, Chatham County.
Pre-construction projects. First one is the I-16 at 307 Dean Forest Road operational improvement. That one, preliminary design has been done for a while, and we've been kind of waiting on funding. Right now, that is looking good, and the county is coordinating in getting that project moved forward. So, Quaco at 17, the intersection project is out for bid right now, and hopefully that one will get started later this summer. The Quaco Road widening project, that is still final design and right-of-way acquisition are underway. And that one should follow the intersection project. So that one should start sometime next year. Stare at 121 at Pipe Makers Canal. That one, the design is complete. There's no right of way. Just finishing up permitting, and we're right now planning on putting that out for bid September. So, skipping down a little bit, Veterans Parkway resurfacing. That one is out for bid right now. Well, so that'll be nice. Truman Linear Park Trail, this is on the construction side. Truman Linear Park Trail is that's the 2A. That's construction is underway on that. Donnie Mercer corridor improvements, that one, I think construction is expected to begin soon. Construction is underway on the LaRoche Jasmine roundabout. And I think the signal is talking about taking the signal out of operation and switching to the roundabout. Second week of July, thank you. And let's see, Canebrake Road, that one, construction is complete on that one. And Benton Boulevard extension is construction is underway. Even if we did get 10 inches of rain earlier this summer. Still, we're still continuing on. Any questions about them? Thank you.
Thanks, Frank. City of Savannah.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. We're working on a few initiatives that I want to give everybody some information about. First one is obviously one of our big Project WREN. As most of you probably participated in, we had what they call a PFPR. They have all these acronyms, but it's the preliminary field plan review meeting. It is being held in Savannah. Actually, today is the second day of that process. So what they're doing there is they're really looking at, we're getting ready to go into the final stages of the design. Give you a few tidbits of information. We got concurrence from the State Historic Preservation Office for that project, and it's also jumped through a major hurdle as it relates to the stormwater issue. give you a quick update on the DeLesset Avenue project. We are currently actively pursuing right-of-way. By actively pursuing, we have made offers to 120 for 120 different parcels. 45 offers were signed and 16 parcels have been closed. So we are actively doing that. We hope to have that finished by December of 2019. Gwinnett Street, this is going to be a major project that's going to impact the new arena district or the canal district. We are actively in right-of-way acquisition. That should be finishing up very soon. We believe that we have about 90% of those parcels actually that acquired or should be acquired very soon. And then the last update is the Truman Trail. There is going to be a public information open house meeting on August 1st. The utility coordination will begin once the city approves the final layout. Any questions about any of those projects? And I apologize if I went pretty fast. Those are pretty significant projects. There's a lot of moving pieces.
Any questions? You have anybody here from Effingham? Richmond Hill? Didn't see anybody here from Pula? Garden City?
Mr. Chairman, we were able to host the Georgia DOT on June 6th, I believe, when they had their open house for the I-95, I-16 widening interchange, 516 work. And we've heard some good news as well about possibly the 307 interchange getting into the mix. So we are excited and scared at the same time about what might be coming. But anyway, we're excited that there's a lot of improvements coming to West Chatham. That's all.
Okay. Fort Wentworth? Tybee Island?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're just excited that we're going to be wrapping up our paving project. I think it's, and the biggest change is, of course, the passing lanes have been taken off of 80. And with 4th of July coming up, we've got some concerns about people forgetting that they're no longer passing lanes. That's a nice way to put it. So we're going to be talking with Chatham County Police and with GSP on how we can address that. The big traffic volumes are coming our way in the next week. Peaking on the 4th of July, we're going to have special traffic controls in place on the island to keep traffic flowing. We're going to be blocking off areas of the islands once the parking is saturated and trying to push people to specific parking areas as it gets. So we're expecting somewhere just shy of 15,000 cars and about 50,000 people coming on that single day, with half of those cars wanting to leave at 10:30 right after fireworks. So we're trying to get that and get them to that bottleneck at Lazaretto Creek and keep traffic flowing as best we can. We think we have a sound plan. We have a public meeting tonight about those traffic controls, and so we're just going to ask everyone to be patient and remember, when you're on our side of Lazaretto Creek, it's Tybee time, so it's going to take a little long. So, thank you.
Okay. Any questions of Tybee? Didn't see anyone here from Bloomingdale. Thunderbolt? Brandenburg? About the Georgia Ports Authority. I didn't see anybody from there. About Chatham Area Transit? Anything?
Good morning. Just a quick update. Our ITS project is we're in the RFP process now, almost done with that, so we should be awarding the contract here in the next month or so. And we have a new board chair and new interim CEO sit on the board today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Savannah International Airport.
We are wrapping up we're finishing up our international arrivals facilities, federal inspection service station. Should be finished in the summer. And we've also about finished the plans to add 4 more gates to the end of the concourse accommodate all the additional growth we're getting. And because of all the construction and moving planes around, we are expanding the terminal apron to accommodate overnight parking. That's so long should be finished middle of August. Probably. We are, as you know, as I've told you, we are installing an inline bag screening system in the basement of the terminal. The 3 phases, the first 2 are pretty much complete. The third one is underway. TSA, because of our tremendous growth, has granted us an additional bag screening machines. We go from 3 to 4. As we're expecting the 4th machine to come in mid-July. It will not be in line for right now, but it will be operated standalone, so that will ease congestion. Those are my
Anybody have any questions, George, from the airport? Hearing none. We have the Hinesville area MPO present.
No report, Mr. Chairman.
No report? Okay. We have the Low Country area MPO.
Just a brief, very brief, is that, as usual, US 17 widening is mainly this group. And, the final, hopefully final construction costs have come in, and they're $25 million above what has been allocated, just being picked up by the MPO and planning both. And so SCDOT and the MPO to come up with $25 million from our annual guide share obligations for the government, which will bring us then to about 2026 or 27 before we're back to having any money for our organization. It's going to be very easy to do the update of our but very seriously, the 2 organizations, and I'm just elected officials on them, but they probably will approve the funding because we don't want to be the people that hold up projects. We can imagine the people of Georgia would probably blame us. That's not. But anyhow, the SCDOT says that the hosting the that they will be letting the contract in 2020. So, and as you know, with any construction project like that, we go through a painful period first during construction, and that will affect you all as well. So, anyhow, I'll keep you up to date as to what's going on. I thought you'd better have seen that now, but you hear it directly from us as opposed to rumors. Actually, Mark was at the meeting.
How's that going?
We don't have a local name.
I'm just teasing.
Yeah. Yeah, that we decided. Yeah. That's good. Anyhow,
Okay. There's no question of is there any other public comments? I don't consider you public, but go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
Oh, I won't take but a minute. Hi, I wanted to take the opportunity, Mr. Chairman, to introduce you and the board to my new Assistant Executive Director, Ms. Pamela Everett. She's an attorney by training and has a host of experience working for both public and private sector, and more importantly, dealing with transportation issues as well. So, Ms. Everett.
Good morning, everybody.
unfamiliar, but I'm glad to be aboard and hope I can be helpful to the board. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our next core MPO board meeting will be Wednesday, August 7th. Same time, but different location. This one will be in the Chatham County Commission Chamber at 124 Bull. And please note the change, and you'll be getting a reminder of it from staff. But it will be in the Commission Chamber. Do we have anything else? Mark, do you have anything else you want?
I was just wanted to note that it's very important to report on last state of our current plan is later in the month, I think around 7th. I'm not sure the exact day, but we have about 2 weeks or 3 weeks fishing after that on the 7th day. We really want to make it for plan about the August 7th, so we don't have to ask y'all next week for review. So please make an effort to attend, or if you can attend, send it all. We will be reaching out probably a couple of times, but
Okay. And we don't have any other agenda items. We got some informational for reference. And if nothing else,
Motion to adjourn.
don't need a motion. We stand adjourned.